Welcome back to another installment of Disney Ride Lore. Today we'll take a trip to Frontierland and catch our 12:35 Fast Pass for the wildest ride in the wilderness. We'll try to uncover as many secrets that Big Thunder Mountain has to offer, while also giving a brief history of what the attraction was first imagined as and what it ultimately became. But before we get started, I just want to tell you guys that I started a Patreon with the link in the description. So if you enjoy my channel and like to help it grow, I would greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, if you're wearing hats or glasses, you best remove them because it's about to be a bumpy ride. After Magic Kingdom's opening in 1971, not everything that was planned for this park would see the light of day. The idea for what we currently know as Adventureland and Frontierland would have looked much different. They would be combined to take shape in the form of a giant plateau known as the Western River Expedition, set to take place during the American expansion to the west. It would house many rides, some of which interlaced, similar to what we have with the People Mover and Space Mountain. Many people forget that Pirates of the Caribbean was not on the roster for opening day Magic Kingdom. The thought process being Florida is already so close to the Caribbean, people in that region would be bored of the retelling of knowledge that they already knew. So this Western-themed land was their answer. Imagineers Tony Baxter and Mark Davis worked tirelessly to make this land a reality. Ironically, a big reason why this land was never built was pirates being excluded from the Magic Kingdom. People heard about this amazing attraction in California that Florida didn't get, so Disney was somewhat pressured into making a newer version. The other reason being the scope of this project would be too cost-heavy to see fruition, which presented another issue for this newer Disney park. Many animatronic animals made for this project had no homes, most of them repurposed, some you may recognize from your favorite Disney rides, like the buffaloes in the Living with the Land, for example. So even though we never got to see this land in its full glory, we still do have some remnants scattered throughout the different attractions. The first realized vision of this attraction was in Disneyland on September 2nd, 1979. The California and Florida versions of mirror images of each other. The main difference being the backdrop and geological inspiration each park chooses. California is based on the hoodoos in the Bryce County National Park in Utah, while Florida, Tokyo, and Paris are based off the more colorful rocks in the Monument Valley in Arizona. A year later in 1980, Disney World would get their version, along with Tokyo in '87 and Paris in '92. All follow a similar storyline of greed and mining on sacred native lands, but we'll get more into those stories a little later. These tracks may differ in small ways, but the premise of zipping through caves, mines, and waterfalls is just some of the scenes fans may enjoy. Each queue outpost is set in a different storyline area, but all give off a similar eerie feeling the deeper you get into the mines and the closer you get to your haunted trains. It may not be the most intense roller coaster in the world, but for Disney standards, it sure lives up to the wildest ride in the wilderness. If you watch my Disney Ride Lore video on the Jungle Cruise, you'll remember I mentioned a group called the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. They have a hidden backstory that is responsible for a lot of very popular Disney attractions, and Big Thunder Mountain has their hands all over it. All four versions of this attraction are set in the Western River Valley in Arizona, so no matter which train you're on, storyline-wise you're in a different city, but in the same cave system. We'll take a brief look at all of them and describe their significance. Disneyland in California is set in Rainbow Ridge. Established in 1869, it was once a bustling mining town. Just a decade later, due to many earthquakes and mysterious accidents, the town would shrink to just a few dozen people scared off by the curse from the corruption of nature's wonderland. Disney World in Florida is set in Tumbleweed. Founded in 1880, it was owned by the Big Thunder Mountain Mining Company, headed by Barnabas T. Bullion, who believed the gold in the mine was his birthright. As the years went on, Tumbleweed would find themselves in the midst of a prolonged drought, which dwindled its population. Bullion would look for help in the form of known charlatan Professor Cumulus Isobar. He said he would save the town with his rain machine. The machine would flood the town and Isobar would flee once he was paid his money. The irony being once he was out of town, his carriage would be caught in the flood he helped to create. Disneyland Paris is set in Thunder Mesa. Founded by Henry Ravenswood in 1849, he would chase the indigenous people off of Big Thunder Island. Henry would rule over stolen land and his family for 11 years. He was especially cruel to his daughter Melanie, never letting her leave the mansion for most of her life, even going as far as dispatching everyone who was interested in her. In 1860, she would meet a foreman in the mine named Jake who she would fall in love with. Before Henry could add another notch to his belt, a giant sinkhole would open up, swallowing Henry and his wife Martha. Since that day, trains in the mine would run by themselves out of control. Tokyo Disney is set in Grizzly Gulch, and this is the only one that has a happy ending. Founded on August 8th of 1888, supposedly the luckiest time of that century when this was founded. However, it didn't take long for the townsfolk to realize that they built the settlement on an active geyser. One day while General Phineas Cosgrove was out exploring, he saw 3 bears scratching their back against the mountain. When they left, he noticed traces of gold and started the Big Grizzly Mountain Mining Company. Since that day, citizens of the new settlement would look after the bears who led them to their newfound fortune. The sound effects used for the trains in the California version of this ride was also used in the Indiana Jones movie The Temple of Doom. In 2017, a doctor from Michigan State University had an unusual amount of patients saying that they passed kidney stones on this attraction in Walt Disney World. Using 174 kidney stones, the study showed a 64% pass rate for passengers sitting in the last car. Trying to recreate the same phenomenon on other Disney coasters such as the Rock and Roller Coaster cannot produce the same results. The trains for Big Thunder Mountain all have silly names such as You Be Bold, I Am Brave, I Be Hardy, and I Am Fearless. Similarly, the Law in Paris' Thunder Mesa have punny names as well. We could all feel safe with Sheriffs Will Ketchum and Be a Hero roaming the streets. And finally, the story of the Ravenswood and the Disneyland Paris version also spills into their version of the Haunted Mansion called the Phantom Manor. The manor is the very mansion Henry held his family captive in. Initially, we thought Henry was gone for good after falling into the sinkhole, but he would return as the phantom of his manor. As we stated before, Jake and Melanie were set to get away and live their life happily ever after, but Henry's ghost would return to claim Jake as his final victim. Unable to cope with losing the love of her life, Melanie roams the halls of her lavish prison, hoping one day Jake will return so they can live their life as they had planned. The climax of this ride is when you enter the catacombs and you see the victims that Henry has claimed, as well as everyone who fell into the sinkhole after the earthquake. But that'll do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this installment of Disney Ride Lore. Let me know what other rides you'd like me to cover in the future, and keep an eye out for different variations of this series in the coming weeks. But until next time, drop a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if I earned it, join the Patreon only if you can, and thank you for watching.